Okay, I'm not quite sure how I'm gonna, follow Candy. I grabbed a piece for later though, in honor of our bar mitzvah boys. Mazel tov to both Sam and to Mason. And Shabbat shalom, everyone. Earlier this week, I saw a video clip of the two famous late-night talk show hosts, Stephen Colbert, who is not Jewish, and Jon Stewart, who is, discussing the recent anti-Semitic comments espoused by rapper Kanye West, comedian Dave Chappelle, and New York Nets basketball player Kyrie Irving. You probably saw it too. Throughout their confrontation of this difficult subject matter, Colbert and Stewart cracked jokes and laughed, partly awkwardly, partly genuine guffaw, about the resurgence of this classic conspiracy theory that Jews control the world. Media, money, politics, and, to quote Jon Stewart, obviously bagel flavors. And they talked about what might be the best path forward to confront it. This is a question with no easy solution, and I subsequently reflected on the difficult subject matter broached in this Shabbat's parasha, Chaye Sarah. While Jon Stewart discusses how, after the unfortunate statements of Kyrie Irving, the phrase #TheJews trended on Twitter, Rabbi Dan Moskowitz, one of our colleagues in Vancouver, refers to a different kind of wordplay than found in the Twitterverse. He points out that a rather peculiar phrase appears in this parasha, Ger v'toshav anochi imachem, I am a resident foreigner among you. This is what Abraham says as he petitions Ephron, the owner of a prime parcel of land, for the right to purchase a part of it as a burial plot for his wife, Sarah. It is this phrase, Ger v'toshav, resident foreigner, which piques our interest. It is an example of one of those delightful and often poignant turns of phrase found in any language, an oxymoron, the bringing together of two seemingly totally opposite terms like act naturally or passive-aggressive. This juxtaposing effect can be powerful, causing a moment of pause to hover over a room as we digest the phrase's meaning. We recognize that an oxymoron challenges us to see compatibility, even harmony, in seemingly incompatible things. This phrase, ger toshav, appears as initially incongruous because on one hand, being a ger, a foreigner or a stranger, implies that you are unfamiliar with the environment, unknown to its people, unaware of its customs and culture. On the other, toshav, a resident, suggests that one has lived in that place for some time, entrenched in its surroundings and having made them a home. The oxymoron is equally a reminder that we can hold conflicting emotions and ideas in our hearts simultaneously, and even want different, seemingly opposing things at the same time. For example, we can love Israel, but be concerned about its current government and particular policies on the agenda. We can want our teachers to be paid fair salaries and work in fair conditions. I say this with a bias as the daughter of a teacher, but also frustrated when the school strikes mean that our children are learning online once again, throwing the plans of parents for a loop and dredging up the trauma of the pandemic virtual classroom. We can want our students to be involved in Hillel at our universities, but feel afraid at the rising tide of anti-Semitism, not just on campus, but in many dark corners of our society. After all, as Rabbi Shai Held notes in his work, The Heart of Torah, human beings are complex creatures capable of, to quote, deep kindness and stunning selfishness. Jon Stewart, for his part, is clearly wounded by how casual and normalized he feels this anti-Semitism has become, but wishes to acknowledge a context, in this case the entertainment industry, which is inherently complex. He can acknowledge that to immediately dismiss something as anti-Semitic or some other form of prejudice A comment, a person, or what have you, may be too simple for comedians like Dave Chappelle, who consistently play with tropes in order to push boundaries for their routines. He can acknowledge that musicians such as Kanye West are known for being erratic and, to quote, hurt people hurt, i.e. someone who is hurt will hurt others in turn. Subsequently, Stewart does not feel that taking a hardline approach, like censorship or suspension, will change anybody's minds. In fact, he feels like pretending that these thoughts don't exist and not dealing with them straightforwardly will not lead to tolerance or acceptance between peoples. So then, what may he suggest as a solution? For Stewart, to confront an uncomfortable situation is to keep a wound open, and wounded he feels indeed, that is for certain. But in order to heal, instead of covering it up and letting it fester, he believes that we need to expose it to air. When it comes to anti-Semitic tropes, he suggests that we can try to de-escalate the situation by inquiring as to why that person believes what they do, and explaining to them the flip side of the coin, such as that to be in an industry does not mean to control it. In other words, he is saying that if we retreat into our corners, we shut down the conversation and the prejudice lingers in the air. It is a fascinating approach, and his approach, and when it comes to our parasha, it may perhaps be no surprise that our own tradition, our Jewish context, offers its own guidance for addressing our own versions of the complicated or even uncomfortable, whatever they may be. It posits that each party can find common ground firstly through demonstrating mutual honor and respect. Abraham, for his part, goes to great lengths to honor Sarah by providing her body a place for its eternal rest in his bargaining with the Hittites. Let us be clear, though, as with all complex subject matters, this negotiation was not easygoing. The late Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory makes the case that this was an intense encounter, with Abraham being acutely aware of his status as a ger toshav. He knows that he only possesses limited power, since it renders him ineligible to own land. Therefore, despite the generous facade, in which Abraham is referred to as a prince of God and invited to bury his dead in the choicest of plots, the implication is that he is still being told he must use one of the burial tombs of the Hittites, being unable to acquire one for himself outright. Ephron is therefore still the majority landowner, leaving Abraham at his mercy, and during a period of extreme emotion and vulnerability nonetheless. However, difficult as it was, Ephron and the Hittites ultimately show Abraham respect by agreeing to sell him the burial plot and in allowing him to pick his choice of land on which to establish it, even if he would not completely own it. This leads to a second principle, which is that we can show a basic level of fairness toward one another. Over the course of this terse negotiation in which Abraham continues to offer the full price, Ephron agrees that he can purchase it at the commercial rate. The verb lishkol is used, which means to weigh, indicating that he quite literally measures out both the agreement and the resultant payment. In other words, the two men find their balance and come to an understanding which feels right and fair to them both. It is, after all, as the Plaut commentary points out, a business transaction between the two men, a contract of legal stature like any other, for Abraham needs a citizen title just like any other man. This becomes, for Abraham, our forefather and the original appointee of the divine, a humbling learning experience, Plaut continues. Abraham must obtain this plot of land, a place to call his own, as he is steeped in the insecurity of his fearful trial at Mount Moriah and the loss of his beloved. Once again, he is tried in his dependence on others and his hope that they will give him what he needs. This is represented in his bowing before the Hittites, in which we witness a man torn between agony and hope once more, that juxtaposition. Abraham is made according to our Hasidim, both great and human in this humility, being stretched in the limits of his faith and praying that this short-term pain will give way to long-term gain. With all this in mind, we can perhaps take this honor, humility, fairness that we have been talking about to the next level and channeling it into showing that deep kindness which Rabbi Held referred to and which both Samson and Mason referred to earlier, and turn it towards one another. In the next chapter of our parashah, it is this trait that distinguishes Rebekah and the very quality that deems her worthy of marrying Isaac when she is discovered at the well, and provides water not just for Eliezer, Abraham's servant, who is tasked with the important mission of finding Isaac a wife, but also his camels. Rashi explains that, through this rather shrewd character test, a woman capable of performing Gemilut Chasadim was able to be identified, since only such a person was fit to enter the house of Abraham. Moreover, she performs these actions without prompting, which, Rabbi Held notes, may be the true measure of her appropriateness as Isaac's partner. Rebekah's nobility of character is of crucial importance, to be sure, in her care for both people and animals, but her deep kindness may be reflective of an even further innate reflection as an appropriate match for Isaac. An ability to anticipate the needs of someone who has been hurt or even traumatized after his brush with death on Mount Moriah, and therefore he cannot articulate his needs and feelings properly anymore. Put differently, the deep kindness of Rebekah is actually defined by, in Held's words, sensitivity and discernment about responding to unspoken needs and yearnings. As we conclude this morning, we notice that the parashah is entitled Chaye Sarah, the life and not the death of our matriarch. Thus we are left with the question, why is it called Chaye Sarah? Our Midrash teaches us that we hear about Sarah's death in connection with her life precisely because her years were full of life. It is therefore maybe fitting that now, at her death, we see Abraham finding the strength to face those who are against him in a time of raw vulnerability. His actions are a reminder for us, in times in which we find ourselves in difficult situations, personally or in the world, that we too can emulate the characteristics of our forebearers: honor, humility, fairness, and kindness, to confront the hard issues, and in the end, be the ones who leave with our heads held high. Ken Yehi Ratzon, Shabbat Shalom.